15 black actresses who were actually prostitutes. Did Hollywood's brightest black icons rise on pure talent? Or were they forced to pay a soul-crushing ransom just to step onto the silver screen? For decades, the industry has polished the glamour while burying a hideous underbelly of exploitation, where legendary roles came with a casting couch price tag that few dared to whisper. Today, we are tearing back the velvet curtain to expose the 15 icons who faced the ultimate choice: surrender their dignity or watch their dreams die. These are the untold sacrifices of the women who built the empire that eventually discarded them. Welcome to Melanin Spotlight. Before we unveil these haunting truths, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because history is about to get real. Which legend story do you think was kept hidden the longest? Tamara Dobson, die age 59 in 2006. In the early 1970s, Tamara Dobson emerged as a towering symbol of grace, power, and undeniable talent. Standing at over 6 feet tall, she was a striking fashion model in New York before Hollywood beckoned with the promise of immortality. In 1972, she auditioned for the role that would define her career, the fierce martial arts-wielding heroine in Cleopatra Jones. But as Tamara stepped into the dazzling glare of Tinseltown, she quickly discovered that the path to the top was paved with a darkness few dared to discuss. The pivotal moment occurred at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel, where she was summoned for a private meeting with producer Max Julian and the assistant casting director. In that lavish suite, the boundaries between business and exploitation vanished. Tamara was forced into a haunting dilemma. Her dream career was within reach, but the price was a series of secret shadows. For 2 grueling weeks, she was dragged into a whirlpool of intimate meetings that ensured the lead role was hers. While she secured the deal, the experience left an invisible, indelible scar on her soul. Cleopatra Jones, 1973, exploded into a global sensation, raking in over $6 million and cementing Tamara as a blaxploitation icon. However, the victory was short-lived. When the studio demanded she perform nude scenes for the sequel scenes that were never in the original script, Tamara stood her ground. Her fierce defiance triggered an immediate and ruthless retaliation from the industry. Her role in the 1975 sequel was slashed, and by the end of that year, Hollywood had turned its back on her entirely. Blacklisted and discarded by the machine she had sacrificed so much for, Tamara walked away. She pivoted to a life in real estate, shunning the spotlight that had once burned her so deeply. She lived out her final years in profound solitude, battling the lingering trauma of her past, alongside the cancer that would eventually claim her life in 2006 at the age of 59. Tamara Dobson remains a testament to the brutal cost of dignity in an era that sought to own her body before it ever respected her art. Vanetta McGee, die age 55 in 2010. Vanetta McGee was widely celebrated as the queen of blaxploitation, a gifted actress whose magnetic screen presence and raw talent should have made her a mainstream legend. In the early 70s, she was a rising star on the Los Angeles theater scene, hungry for a breakthrough. That opportunity arrived in 1971 when she was summoned to the Hollywood Hills home of director William Crane to discuss a project titled Blackula. However, what was framed as a professional script meeting rapidly veered into a much darker territory. The week before Vanetta officially landed the role of Luva, her connection with the director became intensely personal. It was a repeated intimate exchange that bridged the gap between a struggling actress and a breakout star. While Blackula 1972 became a massive success and catapulted her to national renown, the industry immediately sought to box her in. Producers saw her only as a sultry symbol, refusing to allow her to flex her full dramatic range. Like many of her peers, she faced aggressive demands for nudity that were not part of her artistic vision. In a bold act of self-preservation, Vanetta fled the toxic environment of Hollywood for Europe in 1975, scraping by on bit parts in obscure films. The dream she had bartered for never fully materialized, and by 1980, she quit the industry cold. She spent the rest of her life living quietly in Oakland, far from the cameras that had once captured her brilliance. When she passed away in 2010 at the age of 65, she left behind a legacy of unmatched beauty and unfulfilled potential. A survivor of a ruthless system that traded her talent for a temporary silver screen allure. Diana Sands, die Age 39 in 1973. Diana Sands was a force of nature, a Broadway titan whose presence was so commanding, she could bring an entire theater to a breathless standstill. She is eternally remembered for her searing, soulful performance in A Raisin in the Sun, a role that should have been her permanent passport to Hollywood royalty. But when Diana attempted to bridge the gap between the dignity of the New York stage and the predatory machinery of the film industry, she encountered a system that valued her physical allure far more than her intellectual fire. The turning point in her career was marked by a meeting that few dared to discuss, an invitation from the formidable producer David Susskind at the offices of Columbia Pictures. What began as a professional discussion quickly devolved into a silent pact. To secure her place in the legendary film adaptation of her Broadway triumph, Diana was repeatedly summoned to Susskind's private Manhattan apartment. These encounters, shrouded in the toxic haze of the era, became the hidden ransom for her ascent. While A Raisin in the Sun, 1961, was a seismic success that catapulted her to fresh heights, the industry's glow vanished with terrifying speed. Hollywood, having consumed what it wanted, began to weaponize her beauty against her. She was aggressively branded with the "too sexy" tag, a label used to block her path to the deep, serious lead roles she was born to play. By the late 1960s, her undeniable talent was being systematically buried under the industry's obsession with her form. When breast cancer struck in 1967, the very empire that had profited from her brilliance offered her no lifeline and no protection. She was left to battle the illness in a crushing, unmerited solitude, far from the cameras that had once worshipped her. When she passed away in 1973, at the young age of 39, Diana Sands took with her the ache of a magnificent forgotten gift. She remains a haunting symbol of a career cut short not by a lack of talent, but by a ruthless machine that saw a legendary woman as nothing more than a temporary attraction to be used and then discarded. Gloria Hendry, 77. Age now. Gloria Hendry's entry into the Hollywood arena was supposed to be a triumphant tale of a dreamer rising from the neon lights of Las Vegas. As a standout dancer with an electrifying stage presence, she brought a rare, vibrant energy that the film world desperately craved. However, her conquest of Tinseltown began with a scar that would remain for a lifetime. In 1972, the visionary director Larry Cohen summoned her to audition for his groundbreaking film, Black Caesar. But the meeting was not held on a professional set or in a casting office. It was set at the Sands Hotel. The session reportedly stretched from the dead of midnight until the first light of dawn. By the time the sun rose, Gloria had secured the lead role, but at a cost that few could imagine. Initially, the ransom she paid seemed to yield the ultimate reward. Her career ignited, leading to major roles in hits like Hell Up in Harlem and eventually reaching the absolute pinnacle of fame as a Bond girl in Live and Let Die. 1973. She was a pioneer, a black woman standing toe-to-toe with 007. But even at this summit, the industry's rot was visible. Her historic romantic scenes with Roger Moore were ruthlessly axed from prints in the southern United States, a gut-wrenching blow that signaled her decline. Despite her immense promise, Hollywood attempted to reduce her from a legitimate star to a mere prop, pushing her toward the sludge of B-grade adult films. When Gloria finally found the strength to balk at the injustice and refused to be degraded any further, the industry's retaliation was swift and absolute. She was blacklisted from major studios, her dreams of quality cinema turning to dust. In a move of incredible resilience, Gloria walked away from the hollow glitz of the screen in 1976. She traded the cameras for the grounded reality of postal work, choosing a quiet, dignified retirement over a system that demanded her soul in exchange for a flickering spotlight. Today, at 77 years old, she stands as a powerful survivor, a woman who realized that walking away was the only way to save the person behind the persona. Hilda Sims, die Age 75 in 1994. Hilda Sims was a theatrical firebrand who first captured the heart of New York dazzling Broadway audiences with her legendary performance in Anna Lucasta. She possessed a rare magnetic dignity that should have guaranteed her a smooth transition to the silver screen. However, Tinseltown proved to be a far more predatory beast than the stage. In 1952, the promise of a breakout role in The Joe Louis Story led her to a high-stakes meeting at the United Artists' offices with producer Sterling Siliphant. What began as a career-defining test quickly descended into a descending haze of unspoken demands. To secure the lead, Hilda was forced to pay a heavy ransom, engaging in a series of private rendezvous at the producer's Los Angeles apartment. She viewed this trade as a desperate launchpad, but the industry offered no safety net. When the film failed to ignite at the box office, the machine did not blame the production, it blamed Hilda. Her contract was vaporized, and she found herself blacklisted from the major studios she had sacrificed her honor to enter. In a heartbreaking attempt at a revival, she reportedly traded another intimate encounter for a minor bit part in 1957. But the doors remained ruthlessly sealed. Hilda eventually retreated to a life of teaching and theater. But the scars of the industry's betrayal never fully healed. She lingered in a cycle of poverty and sickness until her passing in 1994, at the age of 75, a brilliant talent whose Hollywood dream was strangled by the very hands that promised to lift her up. Dorothy Dandridge, die age 42 in 1965. Dorothy Dandridge was a shimmering icon of the 1950s. A woman of such breathtaking beauty and talent that she became the first black actress to ever receive an Oscar nomination for a leading role. Her performance in Carmen Jones, 1954, was a seismic cultural shift, yet the shine of that achievement masked a life laced with agonizing choices. In her hunt for a role that would help her escape forgettable bit parts, Dorothy encountered director Otto Preminger. Their meeting was not merely about art, it was a blatant swap. For 4 grueling weeks, Dorothy was forced into a series of private encounters at homes and hotels to secure the key to her stardom. Preminger held the power, and Dorothy, craving the spotlight, felt she had no choice but to yield. The liaison bore fruit, reshaping her path and making her a global sensation. However, the price of that bargain was scorched into her future. When her affair with the director eventually fizzled, Dorothy discovered she had lost more than just a lover. She had lost her livelihood. The industry that once worshipped her began to axe her deals, plunging her into a terrifying abyss of depression and financial ruin. By 1963, bankruptcy had stripped her of her home and even the custody of her daughter. The ultimate tragedy arrived in 1965 when Dorothy was found dead at just 42 years old, the victim of a fatal overdose. She remains a haunting reminder that even at the heights of Oscar glory, the barter for fame can ultimately consume the very life it was meant to illuminate. Eartha Kitt, die Age 81 in 2008. Eartha Kitt, the screen queen, who passed away at the age of 81 in 2008, was a force of nature, a woman who possessed a seductive razor-sharp brilliance that could hypnotize an entire continent. In 1950, while performing in a smoke-filled Paris club, she caught the eye of the legendary director Orson Welles. He saw more than just a dancer. He saw the face of Helen of Troy for his production of Dr. Faustus. But the invitation to the opulent Ritz Hotel was not a simple audition. It was a pivotal moment where power and passion became dangerously intertwined. To claim the throne of a leading lady, Eartha was forced into a series of intimate encounters, essentially bartering her dignity for a gateway into theatrical history. While the role launched her onto the global stage, Hollywood's elite responded with a cruel double-edged sword. They were mesmerized by her talent, but ruthlessly slapped her with a stigmatized label due to her association with Welles. She became a shunned star, trapped in the suffocating shade of prejudice. However, Eartha Kitt was not a woman who could be easily broken. When she famously used her voice to protest the Vietnam War during a White House luncheon in 1968, the CIA targeted her, and the industry she had sacrificed so much for slammed its doors shut. Blacklisted and exiled to Europe for a decade, she refused to bow to the machine. She reigned as an international icon abroad, proving that her spirit was far too large for Tinseltown to contain. When she died in 2008, she left behind a legacy of unyielding defiance. A woman who paid the ultimate price for her fame, but never surrendered her soul to the shadows. Diane Carroll, die Age 84 in 2019. Diane Carroll, who died at the age of 84 in 2019, was a stunning, sharp, and profoundly gifted star who shattered television history as the first Black woman to lead her own series in Julia. But the monumental triumph of her career was built upon a foundation of silent, agonizing trade-offs. In 1967, while searching for a breakthrough in a TV world that was still a fortress of exclusion, Diane was summoned to the NBC Burbank offices to meet producer Hal Cantor. The encounter strayed far from the boundaries of professional business. Drawn to her undeniable allure, the producer floated a private deal. And after only 2 loaded meetings, Diane secured the 5-year contract that would change her life. She became a household name. But the weight of that crown was almost too much to bear. Behind the perfect image of Julia Baker, Diane was being ground down by a system that refused to see the reality of Black life. The show was frequently criticized for being too whitewashed, and Diane found herself boxed out of the serious, gritty film roles she truly craved. All of Hollywood seemed to slam its doors on her artistic ambition, leaving her trapped in a rigid, unbreakable persona. The psychological strain was immense, her marriage shattered under the pressure, and she was eventually forced to sell her home to settle mounting debts. A luminous star who had surrendered so much just to have a seat at the table, Diane Carroll was ultimately penalized by the very rules she helped to rewrite. Her journey remains a poignant reminder of the invisible toll paid by those who dare to be first, proving that even a historic success can leave behind a trail of unquenchable regret. Cicely Tyson, die Age, 96 in 2021. Cicely Tyson was the ultimate titan of American cinema, a woman of unyielding grit whose name became synonymous with the dignity of the Black experience. But behind her legendary status as a pioneer of the screen lay a tear-drenched history of the steep price she paid to survive a power-manipulated industry. In 1967, while still a promising model, Cicely's life took a sharp turn when she was called to audition for The Heart is a Lonely Hunter. To claim a role in such a massive project, she discovered that talent was merely the beginning. The industry demanded a heavy ransom. She was summoned to a private meeting with producer Mark Merson at the Beverly Hilton, an encounter that twisted the course of her life and secured her the lead. While the role launched her acting rise, the glow faded with terrifying speed. Having gained a foothold, Cicely was immediately pushed to overhaul her entire physical identity. The studio demanded she shave her head and starve herself to a skeletal frame to fit a specific actress mold. When she fiercely balked at these dehumanizing demands, the retaliation was cold. And financial, the studio slashed her contract pay by 30%. Following this rebellion, the leads dried up completely. For the next 5 years, this monumental talent was forced to scrape by on welfare and shallow bit parts that insulted her capabilities. Cicely Tyson eventually became a symbol of resilience. But her early years serve as a brutal reminder of a Hollywood that tried to crush a star for refusing to be bent by its cruel, unyielding rules. Juanita Moore, die Age 99 in 2014. Juanita Moore was the heart of the 1959 masterpiece, Imitation of Life, a performance so powerful it earned her an Oscar nomination for her portrayal of a mother entangled in the agony of racial strife. While the world saw her as a breakout success, few knew that her own life was a fierce, invisible battleground. In 1958, tired of being stuck in forgettable bits, Juanita saw a universal project that could rewrite her fate. Meeting director Douglas Sirk and producer Ross Hunter at the studio offices unlocked the doors she had dreamed of. But like so many legends of that era, claiming the role exacted a shattering levy. A single private meeting at Sirk's home sealed the pivot, granting her the part that would forge her name in history. Tragically, the brilliance of the film did not protect her. After failing to clinch the Oscar, the industry that had just praised her suddenly found her expendable. The studio ruthlessly ditched her contract renewal, and the big opportunities she had sacrificed so much for grew scarce. For the next decade, one of the most talented women in Hollywood was shoved back into maid roles, her pay slashed to a mere 40% of her previous worth. Slowly, the shine of an Oscar-nominated star was allowed to dull into oblivion. Juanita Moore lived to be 99, yet she spent her final decade scraping by in poverty, a heartbreaking testament to a glamorous yet ruthless machine that harvests a woman's soul for a hit movie and then leaves her to fade into a nameless, unrewarded silence. Pam Grier, 76, age now. Pam Grier is celebrated today as an unbreakable icon of feminine strength. The fierce heroine of hits like Coffee and Foxy Brown, who redefined what it meant to be a black woman on screen. Yet in 1972, long before she became a symbol of steel and survival, Pam was a humble medical aid worker trying to navigate the treacherous waters of Hollywood. When director Jack Hill beckoned her to audition for the role of Coffee, she stepped into his office expecting a fair test of her talent. Instead, she found herself thrust into a predatory bind where the lead role was tied to hidden bargains. To seize her entry into the limelight, Pam was forced to endure off-script demands and barter her dignity in a way no woman should ever have to face. While her rise was meteoric, the tough persona she projected on screen was a shield for the wrenching choices she had made behind the scenes. However, Pam's true strength eventually emerged when she reached her breaking point. In 1975, while filming Friday Foster, she took a bold stand and flat-out refused to perform nude scenes. The industry's response was a swift and brutal gut punch. She was booted from the role, and her soaring career was intentionally sabotaged. Tragedy continued to pile on just a year later when she was diagnosed with stage 3 cervical cancer, a battle that sidelined her for years and allowed the spotlight to dim. Today, at 76 years old, Pam Grier stands as a monumental survivor. Her legacy is not just one of cinematic triumphs, but of a woman who wagered her honor to find a foothold, only to realize that her true power lay in her refusal to be owned by the machine. Rosalind Cash died age 56 in 1995. Rosalind Cash was a magnetic and profoundly gifted actress who surged into the 1970s as a radiant icon of vitality and sophistication. Her breakout lead in the 1971 sci-fi epic The Omega Man was supposed to be the springboard that launched her into permanent superstardom. But the lone Hollywood blaze of her career was ignited by a dark, private encounter that stuns in hindsight. In 1970, while still honing her craft on the stage, Rosalind met director Boris Sagal at a hotel to discuss the role. That night, she crossed a threshold of no return, yielding to an intimate rendezvous that ended with her securing the lead. While the film's premiere brought her immense praise, the industry's reaction was not one of support, but of calculated restriction. Following her triumph, the studio slapped a bizarre and racist clause onto her future, a permanent ban on romantic scenes with white actors. This noose effectively strangled her career path, causing big breaks to evaporate instantly. One of the most vivid talents of her generation found her leads swapped for shallow TV bits and minor guest spots that could never showcase her true brilliance. Her career remained frozen for years, a faint name in the annals of a system that ruthlessly buried her potential because she refused to fit into their narrow, biased boxes. When cancer claimed her life in 1995, at the age of 56, Rosalind Cash left behind a story of immense, unfulfilled promise. She remains a sorrowful reminder of how Hollywood can harvest a woman's beauty for a single hit, then lock the doors and throw away the key when she demands to be treated as a true artist. Nichelle Nichols, die age 89 in 2022. Nichelle Nichols, who passed away at the age of 89 in 2022, was far more than an actress. She was a cultural revolutionary who shattered the celestial ceiling as Lieutenant Uhura on Star Trek. In 1965, amidst the heights of the civil rights movement, Nichelle was summoned to audition for a role that would make her the first Black woman in a prominent non-servant role on American television. However, the gatekeeper to this historic opportunity was producer Gene Roddenberry, and the ransom for the role involved a private, intimate encounter at the Desilu offices. While this connection secured her place among the stars, the reality on the ground was far from a utopia. Despite her groundbreaking presence, the industry's internal bias was staggering. Nichelle found herself trapped in a contract that paid her 50% less than her white co-stars, a brutal reminder that even in space, this racial hierarchy remained ironclad. The psychological toll of the pay squeeze and the constant pressure from producers nearly drove her to quit in 1967. It was only a chance meeting with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who told her she could not leave because she was a vital symbol of hope that kept her in the chair. though her career after the series struggled to find roles of equal magnitude. Nichelle Nichols spent her final decades as a beacon of inspiration, forever proving that while she had to navigate a power-drunk industry to reach the stars, her legacy would remain untouchable. Pearl Bailey died age 72 in 1990. Pearl Bailey was a force of pure, unfiltered charisma, a legendary singer and actress whose emotion-drenched performances made her a household name across America. In 1953, her life took a sharp and permanent turn when she caught the eye of Hollywood heavyweight Darryl Zanuck during a club performance. While the promise of a role in Carmen Jones, 1954, seemed like a dream, the audition was merely a front for a loaded proposition. After a private office meeting, Pearl was forced into an unforgettable night at Zanuck's home as the prerequisite for her screen debut. The payoff was not the leading role she deserved, but a secondary part that launched her onto a rugged and exploitative trail. Pearl was locked into a 7-year exclusive contract at rock-bottom pay, a predatory arrangement that effectively owned her talent while offering her no growth. For years, she was relegated to comic bits and side characters, her immense depth and soul being traded for industry scraps. Refusing to be broken by a system that only wanted to use her body and voice for cheap thrills, Pearl eventually walked away from films in 1960. She reclaimed her power on the Broadway stage, where her true fire could finally burn without the suffocating shadows of Hollywood's demands. When she died in 1990 at the age of 72, she left behind a legacy that was both a triumph of spirit and a stark warning about the brutal cost of a Hollywood foothold. Lena Horne, die 92 in 2010. Lena Horne was a legendary voice and a shimmering emblem of R&B, a woman whose radiant beauty and breathtaking talent made her a pioneer in the golden age of cinema. In 1942, while she was performing at the iconic Cotton Club, the powerful machinery of MGM beckoned with an offer that seemed like a dream, a long-term film deal and a starring role in Cabin in the Sky, 1943. But behind that plump pact lurked a shadowed path where Lena's worth was wrung dry before she even stepped onto the set. To secure her place as the first black woman to sign such a monumental contract, she was forced to navigate a predatory environment where the ransom was not paid in talent alone, but in her own honor and body. From her very first meeting with MGM boss Louis B. Mayer, Lena was presented with an irresistible pitch that came with a devastating price. She entered into a lover-like bond that granted her front-row status at the studio. Yet the thorns of this arrangement lined every step of her journey. Even as she rocketed to Hollywood stardom, she remained chained by the industry's vicious racial codes. Her scenes were frequently butchered for Southern screens, and she was strictly barred from even a scripted kiss with white co-stars. She famously described herself as feeling caged like a bird, trapped between the dazzling footlights and a system that refused to see her as a whole human being. The ultimate collapse of her film career arrived in 1950 when Lena finally found the strength to refuse a continued liaison with Mayer. The retaliation was swift and absolute. Her long-term deal was vaporized, and she was effectively shut out of the major film roles she had sacrificed so much to attain. Undeterred, Lena pivoted to her first love music, where she continued to shine as a global icon and a fierce civil rights activist. When she passed away in 2010 at the age of 92, she left behind a legacy of immense grace and unquenchable fire. Lena Horne's story remains a stark reminder of a Hollywood dream that was left unfinished, haunted by the regrets of a system that demanded a woman's soul in exchange for a flickering moment of glory. As we look back at these 15 shattered dreams, a haunting question remains. Was their tragic fall the price of inevitable stardom or a calculated sacrifice required by a power-drunk machine? The industry harvested their beauty and silenced their truths, leaving us to wonder if a black woman in the golden age could ever truly be free. Was it a fair trade for immortality or a systemic crime against their humanity that we are only now beginning to understand? We want to hear from you. Subscribe to Melanin Spotlight and join our community of truth seekers. Drop a comment below. Do you believe Hollywood has actually changed, or is the casting couch just better at hiding in the modern era? Let's keep their fire burning and debate the legacy they left behind.